I always prided myself on knowing exactly where I stood in life. My career was thriving, my friends respected me, and my marriage, at least on the surface, was the envy of everyone who knew us. Jessica and I had built a comfortable life together in our upscale downtown apartment, filled with laughter, late-night conversations, and shared dreams. But that illusion shattered the day she decided she needed a break. It was a Wednesday evening, and I was wrapping up a presentation for a new client when she walked in, her designer heels clicking authoritatively against the hardwood floors. Her face was a mask of irritation, something I hadn't seen since our early days. "We need to talk," she declared, tossing her handbag onto the coffee table with a force that startled me. I could feel the tension in the room thickening. "Sure, what's going on?" She took a deep breath, her eyes darting away from mine. "I just feel like we're stuck in a rut. I need some space to figure things out." Space. The word hung between us like a guillotine blade. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Is this about work? You've been stressed lately," Jessica scoffed, rolling her eyes. "It's not just work, Tom. It's everything. I need to explore who I am without all these constraints." I couldn't help but feel a pang of frustration. Here we were, comfortable and successful, and she wanted out? "So what does that mean for us?" She hesitated, then met my gaze with a coldness that sent chills down my spine. "I think we need a temporary separation. Maybe time apart will help us see things more clearly." The room seemed to shrink around me. I had always been the confident one, the steady rock in our relationship. This was new territory, and I wasn't sure how to navigate it. But I refused to let her destabilize me. "Fine. Take the time you need. But understand, I'm not going to beg you to stay." Jessica's lips curled into a sneer. "Good. Maybe this will make you realize what you really want." As she left that evening, the door slamming shut behind her, I felt a mix of anger and determination. I wasn't going to let her leave me without a fight. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a twisted game that would push me to my limits and beyond. The days that followed Jessica's departure were a whirlwind of mixed emotions. I tried to maintain my composure, immersing myself deeper into work and social engagements to keep my mind occupied. Confidence had always been my shield, and I wasn't about to let her absence shake that. One Friday evening, I decided to visit our favorite upscale restaurant, a place we frequented for our anniversary celebrations and other special occasions. It was my way of reminding myself of the good times, of what we had built together. As I walked through the door, the familiar ambience provided a fleeting sense of comfort. Seated at a corner table, I noticed Jessica almost immediately. She was laughing loudly with a man I didn't recognize, a man whose demeanor suggested he was the kind she never met my gaze with. My heart skipped a beat, but I pushed the feeling aside. Confidence was key. I approached the table, my stride purposeful. Jessica looked up, her eyes widening in surprise before her expression hardened into something cold and calculating. "Tom," she greeted, her tone dripping with insincerity. "What are you doing here?" I took a seat opposite her, maintaining steady eye contact. "I thought it'd be nice to catch up. How have you been?" She glanced at the man beside her, then back at me with a sneer. "Oh, exploring new horizons. Maybe even finding someone who can actually appreciate me." Her words were like poison, each syllable designed to sting. I remained unfazed, though a surge of anger bubbled beneath the surface. "I see you've found good company," I remarked coolly. Jessica laughed, a harsh, grating sound that drew unwanted attention. "Yes, finally someone who understands me. Unlike you, who was always too busy with your precious career." Her blatant disrespect fueled my resolve. I had always been the confident one, the steady rock, but her attitude was pushing me to my limits. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I replied evenly. "But I'm here because I want to understand why you left." She scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Understand? Maybe you never really did. Perhaps it's time you saw the truth." Before I could respond, the man leaned in, whispering something in Jessica's ear. Her eyes sparkled with amusement, and she shot a mocking glance in my direction. I could feel the eyes of other diners on us, but I held my ground. Look, Jessica, I began, my voice steady. If you're happy with him, that's your choice. But don't expect me to come crawling back when you realize what you've lost. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor loudly. Oh, please! I could never come crawling to someone as insecure as you. With that, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking defiantly. I watched her go, a mix of satisfaction and frustration swirling within me. She thought she could rile me up, make me show weakness. But I remained composed, knowing that losing her wasn't the end of the world. If anything, it was a chance to reclaim my life and self-respect. As I left the restaurant, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the park tomorrow at midnight. The message lingered in my mind long after I had left the restaurant. We need to talk. Meet me at the park tomorrow at midnight. It was cryptic, unsettling even. Who could it be? An old friend? A disgruntled client? Or perhaps someone connected to Jessica's sudden departure? Despite the late hour, sleep eluded me. My mind raced with possibilities, each more unnerving than the last. But my confidence remained unshaken. If someone wanted to communicate, I would be ready. Midnight arrived, cloaked in darkness, and a thin veil of mist that hugged the city park. I arrived early, the cool night air doing little to quell the tension building within me. The park was eerily quiet, the usual sounds of nightlife subdued under the cover of night. I found the designated meeting spot beneath a large oak tree, its branches stretching out like protective arms. As I approached, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Mark, an old college friend whom I hadn't seen in years. His presence was unexpected, and his expression was grave. Tom, he greeted, his voice low and serious. I didn't expect to see you here. I nodded, taking a seat on the nearby bench. You said you needed to talk. What's going on? Mark glanced around cautiously before leaning in closer. It's about Jessica. My heart skipped a beat. What about her? He hesitated, his eyes darting to ensure we weren't overheard. She's not who you think she is. There are things you need to know, things she's been hiding. I felt a surge of frustration. Jessica had always been the one to keep secrets, especially when it came to her personal life. Go on. Mark took a deep breath. A few months ago, Jessica got involved with some dangerous people. She was looking for excitement, something to break the monotony of her so-called break. I tried to warn her, but she wouldn't listen. I frowned, my confidence wavering for the first time since her departure. What kind of dangerous people? He glanced around again before continuing. She got tangled up with a group that deals with illegal transactions, information, drugs, you name it. They promised her thrills and experiences, something she clearly craved. My mind raced. This explains some of the erratic behavior I had witnessed before her leaving. Why are you telling me this now? Mark sighed. Because I've seen what they're capable of, and I'm worried she's in over her head. Last week, I saw her meeting with them again. It wasn't just casual anymore. She's deeply involved. A chill ran down my spine. Jessica's facade of control was beginning to crumble. What do you want me to do? He looked me straight in the eyes. You need to find her before things get worse. They're not the forgiving type, and if she tries to leave, they won't hesitate to harm her. And possibly you. The weight of his words pressed down on me. Revenge wasn't even on my mind yet, but the situation was escalating beyond a simple marital spat. Jessica's reckless pursuit of excitement had now entangled both our lives in something far more sinister. I stood up, determination hardening my resolve. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the warning. I'll handle it. As I walked away from the park, the gravity of the situation settled in. Jessica's actions were no longer just a personal betrayal. They were a threat to our safety and our lives. My confidence remained intact, but now it was fueled by a need to protect and to uncover the truth behind her deceit. The following week was a blur of investigation and unease. Mark's warning echoed in my mind as I delved deeper into Jessica's sudden entanglement with dangerous people. My confidence, once solely a shield, now fueled a relentless pursuit of the truth. I wasn't just trying to save my marriage anymore, I was determined to protect both of us from the chaos she had invited into our lives. I started by retracing Jessica's steps, looking into her recent activities and social circles. Her phone had been silent since she left, a stark contrast to her usually constant communication. I enlisted the help of a private investigator, someone I knew could navigate the murky waters of Jessica's new associations without raising suspicion. Meanwhile, Jessica seemed oblivious to the storm brewing around her. She continued her boorish and deceitful behavior, flaunting her new relationships with a blatant disregard for our past. Each encounter I observed only cemented my resolve. She was a master manipulator, lying effortlessly to cover her tracks, and treating our relationship with the contempt of someone discarding an old, useless item. One evening, as I was reviewing the investigator's findings, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. She's meeting them tonight. You need to stop this before it's too late. My blood ran cold. It was clear now that Jessica was in deeper trouble than I had initially imagined, and whatever she had gotten herself into, it wasn't going to end well. Determined to confront her, I decided to visit her during one of her so-called explorations. I knew of a high-end nightclub she had been frequenting lately, a place where her new friends often gathered. As I entered, the pulsating music and flashing lights were a stark contrast to the calmness I usually thrived in. But I remained undeterred, my confidence unwavering. I spotted Jessica across the room, surrounded by a group of well-dressed men. Her laughter rang out, loud and mocking, as she flirted shamelessly. It was infuriating to see her so carefree, oblivious to the destruction she was causing. I approached her, my presence commanding attention without needing to raise my voice. "Jessica!" I called out, my tone firm yet composed. She turned, her expression shifting from amusement to irritation. "Tom, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at one of your precious meetings?" I ignored her attempt to undermine me. "I could ask you the same thing. It seems you're having a wonderful time." Her eyes narrowed, and she gave me a disdainful smirk. "Oh, please! You wouldn't understand. This is life, Tom. Not the boring, predictable existence you cling to." I took a deep breath, feeling a surge of anger but keeping it in check. "This isn't life, Jessica. It's a nightmare. You're playing with fire, and you're dragging everyone around you into the flames." She laughed, a harsh, grating sound that made heads turn. "Oh, spare me the sermon. Maybe if you loosened up a bit, you'd see things differently." Before I could respond, one of the men stepped forward, his demeanor aggressive. "Maybe we should leave, Jessica. Not everyone here is as tolerant as you." I could feel the tension escalating, but I stood my ground. "Is this what you want, Jessica? To surround yourself with these people and abandon everything we built together?" Her facade began to crack, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability beneath the bitchy exterior. For a moment, I saw the woman I once loved, lost in her quest for something she couldn't define. But the moment was fleeting, replaced by her usual arrogance. "You don't get to dictate what I want," she snapped. "Maybe it's time you accept that we're done." With that, she turned and walked away, the room buzzing with whispered conversations and stolen glances. I knew then that confronting her head-on wasn't going to change anything. She was too far gone, too entrenched in her new life to see reason. As I left the club, my mind raced with thoughts of how to handle the situation. Revenge had never been part of my character, but the betrayal and deceit were pushing me toward a path I never thought I'd tread. I needed to regain control, to ensure that Jessica's reckless actions wouldn't destroy everything we had, or anything else she touched. Back at home, I took a moment to collect my thoughts. My confidence was still intact, but now it was laced with a determination that bordered on obsession. I couldn't let her continue down this path, not without consequences. Little did I know, the twists and turns of this tangled web were only beginning, and the revenge I was about to orchestrate would be as cold and calculated as it was devastating. Determined not to let Jessica's web of deceit continue unchecked, I decided it was time to escalate my efforts. Confidence had always been my anchor, and now it was the driving force propelling me deeper into the labyrinth of lies she had constructed. I reached out to Alex, a seasoned private investigator I had known from my early career days. His reputation for uncovering the truth without leaving a trace made him the perfect choice for the delicate task at hand. Alex arrived at my apartment the next morning, his presence a blend of professionalism and subtle intensity. After a brief briefing, he got to work, tapping into his network and utilizing resources I didn't have access to. Days turned into restless nights as I awaited updates, each passing hour filled with a mix of anticipation and unease. A week later, Alex returned with a dossier that would change everything. He laid out photographs, messages, and financial records that painted a damning picture of Jessica's activities. It wasn't just casual infidelity. She had multiple ongoing affairs, each more entangled than the last. The men she was involved with ranged from influential businessmen to shadowy figures with questionable reputations. Among them was Daniel, a charismatic entrepreneur whose charm masked a ruthless ambition. As I sifted through the evidence, a sinking realization took hold. Jessica had been meticulously covering her tracks, ensuring that her deceptions went unnoticed. Her lies were not just about finding lovers. They were part of a larger, more sinister agenda. The connections to the dangerous group Mark had warned me about became alarmingly clear. This wasn't merely a case of a restless wife seeking excitement. Jessica was actively collaborating with forces that could jeopardize both our lives. Armed with this information, I knew confrontation was inevitable. I arranged to meet Jessica at our apartment, the very place where our lives had once been so intertwined. The air was thick with tension as she arrived, her demeanor as bitchy and dismissive as ever. Her designer heels clicked against the hardwood floor, a mocking reminder of the facade she maintained. "Tom," she greeted, her tone icy. "I see you've been busy." I wasted no time. "Jessica, we need to talk. Now!" She rolled her eyes, a smug smile playing on her lips. "About what? Your newfound detective skills?" I held up the dossier, each piece of evidence laid bare. "About everything. Your affairs, your connections with dangerous people. What the hell is going on?" Her facade faltered for a split second, a flicker of something resembling fear, or was it anger, crossing her face before she regained her composure. "You have no idea what you're talking about." I took a step closer, unwavering. "Oh, I think I do. You've been lying to me, manipulating me, and involving our lives with people who can't be trusted." "Why, Jessica? Why all of this?" Her eyes hardened, and she took a deep breath, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You never understood me, Tom. You were always too focused on your career, too concerned with appearances. I needed more, something real, something exciting." I felt a surge of frustration, but I kept my voice calm. "This isn't the way to find what you're looking for. You're destroying everything we built together." She laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "Building? Please. You were never truly present. I did what I had to do to feel alive." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Alex stood there, his expression unreadable. Jessica's eyes darted to him, and for a moment, the room seemed to freeze. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice trembling slightly. Alex stepped forward, laying out the evidence one more time. "Jessica, you need to stop this. You're playing with fire, and it's only a matter of time before it consumes you and everyone around you." Her facade crumbled entirely, revealing raw vulnerability beneath the bitchy exterior. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked between Alex and me. "I didn't want it to be like this," she whispered. I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of pity and determination. "It's too late, Jessica. You need to make a choice. Leave this life behind or face the consequences of your actions." She looked at me, a flicker of the woman I once loved shining through the bitterness. "And what consequences are those, Tom? You're going to ruin me?" I shook my head. "No, Jessica. But you're heading down a path that will destroy everything we had, and possibly more. I won't let that happen." As the weight of my words hung in the air, I realized that this confrontation was the tipping point. Jessica's lies and manipulations had reached a boiling point, and the path forward was fraught with danger and uncertainty. My confidence remained steadfast, but the emotional toll was beginning to manifest. I was no longer just fighting for our marriage. I was battling to save both of our lives from the darkness. She had embraced the confrontation, and our apartment left me with a whirlwind of emotions. Jessica's facade had finally cracked, revealing the turmoil beneath her bitchy exterior. As she stood there, tears streaming down her face, I felt a mix of pity and steely determination. This was the moment where everything could change, for better or worse. Days turned into a tense standoff. Jessica oscillated between moments of vulnerability and bouts of anger, making it clear that her path was diverging further from mine. Her lies and deceit had not only jeopardized our marriage, but had also entangled us in a web of dangerous associations that threatened our very safety. I decided to take matters into my own hands. Confidence had always been my strength, and now it was my weapon. I couldn't rely solely on Alex and Mark. I needed to uncover the full extent of Jessica's involvement with the dangerous group she had become part of. One evening, I received an anonymous tip pointing me toward an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The message was vague but clear. If you want to understand what's happening, meet me there at 2 a.m. My heart raced with anticipation and caution. This could be the breakthrough I needed, or another trap. As midnight approached, I drove to the location, the deserted streets amplifying the sense of foreboding. The warehouse loomed before me, its broken windows and graffiti-covered walls hinting at the secrets it held. I parked a safe distance away and approached on foot, my senses heightened. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of damp and decay. The only light came from a single, flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. A figure emerged from the shadows, an informant who had once worked closely with the group Jessica was involved with. "You're looking for answers," he stated plainly, his voice devoid of emotion. I nodded, my confidence unwavering. "Yes. I need to know everything about Jessica's involvement," he sighed, glancing around nervously. "It's deeper than you think. She's not just involved, she's a key player. The group operates in the shadows, dealing with information trafficking, blackmail, and more. Jessica was their liaison, using her charm and manipulative skills to control key figures." My mind raced as he continued. "But things went south when she tried to back out. They don't take kindly to traitors. If you want to protect yourself and her, you need to act fast." The weight of his words pressed down on me. Jessica's quest for excitement had spiraled into something far more sinister, and now both our lives were at stake. I realized that confronting her wasn't just about saving our marriage, it was about survival. As I left the warehouse, the gravity of the situation settled in. Revenge was no longer a fleeting thought. It had transformed into a calculated strategy. Jessica's betrayal had pushed me to a point where cold-blooded retaliation seemed not only justified but necessary. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind churned with plans. I couldn't let her continue down this destructive path without facing the consequences. My confidence, once a shield, was now a catalyst for retribution. Every twist and turn in this tangled web only fueled my determination to reclaim control and expose the lies that had shattered our lives. Little did Jessica know, the revenge I was about to orchestrate would be as meticulous and unforgiving as the deceit she had woven. The battle lines were drawn, and there was no turning back. The days that followed my unsettling meeting at the abandoned warehouse were a testament to the depths of Jessica's deception. Every interaction, every glance, seemed to carry hidden meanings and ulterior motives. My confidence remained unshaken, but beneath the surface, a storm of emotions brewed: anger, betrayal, and a resolute determination to set things right. I knew that confronting Jessica head-on was no longer sufficient. Her entanglement with the dangerous group had transformed her from a wayward spouse into a formidable adversary. To take her down, I needed to be strategic, meticulous, and above all, patient. My first move was to leverage the information Alex had gathered. The dossier was a goldmine of evidence, photos, financial records, and communication logs that could not only expose Jessica but also dismantle the network she was a part of. However, I needed more. Information was power, and I was intent on amassing as much as I could. I reached out to Laura, a trusted journalist friend known for her investigative prowess. She had a reputation for uncovering hidden truths, and wasn't easily intimidated by powerful entities. After a discreet meeting, Laura agreed to help, intrigued by the complexity of the case.
Tom, this is bigger than just a marital issue,
Laura cautioned during our conversation.
If you're going to proceed, you need to be prepared for the fallout. These people aren't known for playing nice.
I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in.
I understand, Laura. But I can't let Jessica continue down this path without facing the consequences.
With Laura's assistance, we began piecing together the full extent of Jessica's involvement. It became clear that she was more than just a liaison. She was a key player, orchestrating transactions and maintaining the group's influence in various sectors. Her charm and manipulative skills had made her indispensable, but they also made her a target. As the evidence mounted, so did the risks. Anonymous threats began to surface, cryptic messages warning me to back off. But instead of deterring me, they only fueled my determination. Jessica's reckless actions had left her vulnerable, and I was intent on exploiting that weakness. One evening, while reviewing the latest findings with Laura, my phone buzzed with another ominous message. "You're playing a dangerous game, Tom. Know your place." I stared at the screen, a surge of adrenaline coursing through me. It was clear that the people behind Jessica's operations were watching my every move. But I wasn't about to let fear dictate my actions. If they wanted a fight, I was ready. The breakthrough came when Alex uncovered a series of encrypted communications between Jessica and Daniel, the charismatic entrepreneur who had recently emerged as one of her primary associates. Decoding these messages revealed plans to expand their operations into new territories, bringing even more people into their orbit of influence and control. Armed with this information, I knew the time had come to take decisive action. My revenge wouldn't be impulsive or driven by anger alone. It would be calculated, leveraging every resource at my disposal to ensure Jessica faced the repercussions of her choices. I orchestrated a series of public disclosures, carefully timed to maximize impact. Laura published exposés detailing the group's illicit activities, complete with evidence and testimonies from insiders who were too afraid to come forward on their own. The media frenzy that ensued put immense pressure on the organization, forcing law enforcement to take notice. Meanwhile, I worked behind the scenes to dismantle the financial networks that Jessica had established. By tracing and freezing assets, I ensured that the group's operations were crippled, leaving them scrambling to maintain their grip on power. Each move was deliberate, designed to weaken their foundation without leaving room for retaliation. Throughout this process, my emotional state was a study in controlled intensity. While anger and frustration simmered beneath the surface, I channeled these emotions into strategic thinking and decisive action. My confidence was my anchor, keeping me focused and resolute amidst the chaos. Jessica, on the other hand, began to feel the heat. Her once unassailable position was now under threat, and cracks in her armor started to show. Desperate attempts to salvage her reputation only highlighted her vulnerabilities, making her increasingly erratic and unpredictable. The final twist came when Daniel, sensing the tide turning against him, decided to confront me directly. One evening, as I was leading a meeting with Laura, I was approached by him in a secluded alley.
"Tom,"
he greeted, his tone deceptively calm.
"You've made quite a mess for us."
I met his gaze, unflinching.
"It's over, Daniel. Your time is up."
He chuckled, a hollow sound that sent shivers down my spine.
"You think you've won? This is just the beginning."
Before I could respond, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Daniel's expression shifted from amusement to panic as he realized the futility of his situation.
"Looks like your so-called victory isn't as secure as you think,"
he muttered, backing away into the shadows. As the sound of approaching police cars filled the air, I knew that the game had changed. What began as a quest for revenge had evolved into a mission to bring down a powerful and dangerous organization. The stakes were higher than ever, but my resolve was unwavering. Revenge had taken on a new meaning. It was no longer about personal vendetta, but about justice and protection. Jessica's actions had endangered not only our lives, but also countless others, and I was determined to see it through to the end. The confrontation with Daniel had been a stark reminder of the stakes involved. As police sirens echoed in the distance, I knew that my actions were no longer confined to the realm of personal revenge. They had escalated into a full-blown war against a formidable and dangerous organization. Jessica's manipulations had not only endangered our lives, but had also entangled us in a web of deceit that seemed impossible to escape. Returning home that night, I found Jessica sitting alone in our living room, her usual bitch facade stripped away, leaving her vulnerable and exposed. Her eyes met mine, a mixture of fear and desperation reflecting back at me. It was a rare moment of honesty, one that I hadn't witnessed since the early days of our marriage.
"Tom,"
she whispered, her voice trembling.
"I never wanted it to go this far."
I took a deep breath, the weight of our situation pressing down on me. My confidence, though still intact, was now tempered with a newfound sense of urgency.
"Jessica, it's too late for apologies. You've dragged us both into something that we can't control anymore."
She looked away, her hands clenching into fists.
"I did what I had to do to feel alive. You never understood that."
I shook my head, frustration bubbling beneath my calm exterior.
"I did understand. I just didn't know how to help you when you started spiraling out of control."
Her defiance returned in full force.
"Help? You think I need your help? I don't need you, Tom. I can handle this on my own."
But handling it on her own was no longer an option. The information Laura had helped uncover was already public, and the authorities were tightening their grip on the organization. Jessica's position was becoming increasingly precarious, and I could see the fear beginning to take hold of her. As days turned into weeks, the pressure mounted. Laura's exposés had not only damaged the organization's reputation, but had also led to several high-profile arrests. However, this victory felt hollow. The more we dismantled the network, the more I realized that Jessica was at the center of it all, her influence far more extensive than I had initially comprehended. One evening, I received a call from Alex. His voice was tense, filled with urgency.
"Tom, we've hit a snag. There's been a breach in our operations, and the organization is retaliating. They know we're targeting them."
My heart raced. Retaliation meant that they were aware of our involvement, and were willing to escalate their tactics.
"What kind of retaliation?"
I asked, trying to keep my voice steady.
"They're targeting our assets, spreading false information to ruin our reputations, and there's talk of sending a message. We need to act fast."
I knew that this was the moment where our battle could turn deadly. The organization wasn't just a group of influential individuals anymore. They were a force willing to eliminate anyone who stood in their way, including me and Jessica. Determined to protect both of us, I devised a plan that was as cold and calculated as the revenge I was beginning to contemplate. It wasn't just about exposing Jessica anymore. It was about ensuring that she couldn't come back to destroy everything I had worked so hard to build. Late one night, I received another anonymous tip. "Meet me at the old pier at midnight. I have information that can help you." Despite the danger, I felt a surge of determination. Every twist and turn in this tangled web had only strengthened my resolve. I arrived at the pier, the moon casting long shadows over the water. A lone figure approached, their face obscured by the darkness.
"Who are you?"
I demanded, my voice echoing across the silent expanse. The figure stepped closer, revealing themselves to be an ex-member of the organization.
"I used to work for them,"
they confessed.
"They've gone too far, and they're planning something big. You need to stop them before it's too late."
I listened intently, as they detailed a plan the organization had devised to cripple our efforts completely. It involved a high-stakes move that would not only eliminate key players, but also ensure that anyone associated with us would suffer dire consequences. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I knew that the time for subtlety was over. Revenge was no longer just a personal vendetta. It had become a necessity for survival. My confidence, once a shield, was now a weapon honed for a decisive strike. The final twist came when I discovered that Jessica had been playing both sides all along. She wasn't just a pawn in the organization's game. She was a mastermind, orchestrating moves that would benefit her ambitions regardless of the cost to our marriage or our lives. Her lies and manipulations were deeper and more intricate than I had ever imagined. Feeling a mix of betrayal and determination, I made the hardest decision of my life. To protect myself and dismantle the organization once and for all, I had to confront Jessica in a way that left no room for escape. It was time to turn the tables, to ensure that she couldn't hurt anyone else or use me as a pawn in her twisted game. The night air was thick with tension as I approached the secluded mansion Jessica had chosen as the meeting point. The sprawling estate, once a symbol of our shared dreams and aspirations, now stood as a fortress of her deceit. The moon cast long shadows across the manicured lawn, masking the darkness that had enveloped our lives. My heart pounded steadily, not with fear, but with a resolute determination. Confidence had been my steadfast companion throughout this ordeal, and tonight, it was the force driving me forward. Every step I took was measured, each movement calculated to ensure that nothing went awry. Revenge wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a meticulously planned operation born from months of betrayal and manipulation. As I approached the grand entrance, the heavy oak doors loomed before me, guarded by two imposing figures clad in black. Their presence was a stark reminder of the dangerous network Jessica had entwined herself with. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before I made my move. "Tom!" Jessica's voice echoed through the halls, smooth and mocking. I turned to see her standing at the top of the grand staircase, her posture exuding the same arrogant confidence that had driven me to this point. Her eyes, once warm and loving, now gleamed with a cold, calculating intent. "Jessica," I replied, my voice unwavering. "It's time to end this." She descended the stairs gracefully, her designer heels clicking rhythmically against the marble floor. "End what, Tom? Our marriage? Our lives?" Her laughter was hollow, devoid of any genuine amusement. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. "End your lies, your manipulations, and your destructive path. Tonight it all stops." Her facade began to crack, a flicker of vulnerability momentarily surfacing before being replaced by her usual scorn. "You think you can just walk in here and dictate terms? You're nothing without me." That was the final straw. Months of patience had worn thin, and the time for restraint had passed. I reached into my coat pocket, retrieving a small, silenced pistol I had kept hidden for just such a moment. My hand was steady, the weight of the weapon a symbol of the control I was reclaiming. "You're right," I said calmly. "I am nothing without you. But tonight, I reclaim everything you took from me." Before she could react, I pulled the trigger. The shot was silent, the bullet finding its mark swiftly and without mercy. Jessica staggered, her eyes widening in shock and betrayal as she clutched her chest, blood seeping through her pristine white blouse. Chaos erupted around us. The guards lunged forward, but I was prepared. With a swift movement, I brandished the weapon, forcing them to back away. "Stay back," I warned, my voice cold and authoritative. "This ends now." Jessica collapsed to the floor, her lifeless body a testament to the extent of her deceit. As the reality of what I had done settled in, a wave of emotions washed over me, satisfaction, sorrow, and an overwhelming sense of finality. Revenge had been served cold, just as I had meticulously planned. But amidst the turmoil, a deeper realization dawned upon me. The path I had chosen, fueled by confidence and a desire for retribution, had led me down a dark and irreversible road. The lines between justice and vengeance had blurred, leaving me to grapple with the consequences of my actions. As the first responders arrived, the weight of the night's events bore down on me. I stood alone in the grand foyer, the echoes of Jessica's laughter now a haunting memory. My emotional state was a complex tapestry, pride in having taken control, remorse for the life we had lost, and a lingering uncertainty about the future I had forged. Revenge had been my anchor, but now, in its aftermath, I found myself adrift in a sea of conflicting emotions. The cold-blooded act I had committed was both a liberation and a curse, a definitive end to Jessica's reign of manipulation, but also the beginning of a new, uncertain chapter in my life. The first light of dawn seeped through the heavy curtains, casting long shadows across the grand foyer where I stood alone. The chaos of the previous night had subsided, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed against my ears. Jessica was gone, and with her departure, So too was the tumultuous chapter of our lives that had spiraled into darkness and deceit. As I sat on the marble staircase, the weight of my actions settled over me like a shroud. Confidence had driven me to reclaim control, to exact revenge on a woman who had shattered our marriage with her lies and manipulations. But now, in the quiet aftermath, that same confidence was interwoven with a creeping sense of unease. Had I gone too far? Was there no turning back? My phone buzzed on the nearby table, jolting me from my reverie. It was a message from Alex. "We need to talk. Meet at the office ASAP." My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the realization that the consequences of my actions were far from over. I made my way to the study, where Alex awaited with a grave expression. The room, once a sanctuary of strategy and planning, now felt cold and impersonal.
"Tom,"
he began, his voice steady but tinged with concern.
"what you did last night, it's significant. Not just for you and Jessica, but for everything we've been working to dismantle."
I nodded, my jaw set.
"I know. It was necessary."
Alex sighed, pulling out a stack of documents.
"It's more complicated than that. Jessica wasn't just a pawn. She was deeply entrenched in the organization. Her death is going to stir things up in ways we didn't anticipate."
I leaned forward, scanning the papers he laid out. Financial records, communication logs, and detailed reports painted a clearer picture of the organization's inner workings. With Jessica out of the equation, power struggles were inevitable. Allies could become enemies, and threats could escalate.
"What's our next move?"
I asked, my confidence returning as I took control of the situation.
"We need to secure the evidence and ensure that everything we've exposed is airtight,"
Alex replied.
"But there's something else. We've received warnings, more direct this time. They're not just trying to intimidate us, they're actively hunting."
A chill ran down my spine.
"They won't let this go. But I'm not backing down."
Alex nodded.
"I know. But you need to be prepared for what's coming. This isn't just about revenge anymore. It's about survival."
As the days progressed, the true extent of the organization's reach became apparent. Attempts to discredit us increased, with fabricated scandals and false narratives spreading like wildfire. It was clear they were desperate to regain control and silence anyone who stood in their way. One evening, as I was reviewing the latest developments, Laura reached out.
"Tom, I've uncovered something significant. There's a meeting scheduled next week with some high-level members of the organization. It could be our chance to strike a final blow."
I felt a surge of determination.
"I'll attend. We need to bring this to an end."
The night before the meeting, sleep eluded me. My mind raced with strategies and contingencies. Confidence remained my steadfast ally, but the emotional toll of the past weeks weighed heavily on me. The lines between right and wrong blurred as I grappled with the magnitude of my actions. The day of the meeting arrived, and Laura briefed me one last time.
"Remember, we need concrete evidence. Anything that can definitively link them to the crimes we've exposed."
I nodded, steeling myself for what was to come.
"Let's do this."
Entering the dimly lit conference room, the atmosphere was tense. High-ranking members of the organization sat around the table, their expressions guarded and wary. At the head of the table stood Daniel, his presence commanding and unyielding.
"Tom,"
he greeted, a hint of menace underlying his cordiality.
"Glad you could join us."
I took a deep breath, maintaining my confident demeanor.
"Let's get to the point, Daniel. We've disrupted your operations, exposed your dealings, and now you're here to discuss terms?"
Daniel's eyes narrowed.
"Terms? No, Tom. We're here to negotiate a future where neither of us has to suffer the consequences of this little vendetta you've created."
Before I could respond, Laura stepped forward, holding up a USB drive.
"This contains irrefutable evidence of your illicit activities, your financial manipulations, and your connections to various criminal enterprises. The authorities are already on their way."
Gasps filled the room as members glanced nervously at one another. Daniel's facade began to crack, revealing a flicker of panic.
"This changes nothing,"
he spat.
"You think you've won? This is just the beginning."
I remained unfazed, my confidence unwavering.
"It's over, Daniel. You have no choice but to cooperate or face the full force of the law.
As the tension reached its peak, the sound of sirens grew louder outside, signaling the imminent arrival of law enforcement. Daniel's composure shattered entirely, his eyes darting around the room in desperation.
This isn't the end,
he vowed.
We'll find a way to come back from this.
But as the police stormed in, arresting the remaining members and seizing the evidence, I felt a sense of closure. The organization was dismantled, its leaders brought to justice. Revenge had been served, not just for me, but for everyone they had wronged. As I stood amidst the aftermath, the weight of my actions pressed upon me. Jessica was dead, a casualty of our tumultuous relationship and the battle we had waged against a common enemy. Her deceit had set this chain of events into motion, and now, the final act had played out. Walking out of the mansion, the morning sun shining brightly overhead, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Confidence remained, tempered by the shadows of what had transpired. Revenge had been a driving force, but it had come at a steep price. The echoes of silence that now surrounded me were a constant reminder of the path I had chosen, a path that had led me to reclaim control, but also left me grappling with the remnants of a life irrevocably changed. As I looked toward the horizon, the future seemed uncertain, yet filled with the promise of a new beginning. The twists and turns of this journey had tested every facet of my strength and resolve, but I emerged on the other side, a man transformed by the fires of betrayal and vengeance.